Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Portion Perfection Professional Weight Management series, where we bring you strategies from the best minds in the industry. I'm Amanda Clark, an advanced accredited practicing dietitian, and I've been working in weight management for somewhere over 25 years. Today, we're talking about sleep and how that affects body weight. I'm really thrilled to have found Dr. Sebastian Peterson, who's a rehabilitation medicine physician on the Gold Coast. His work covers a lot of areas of preventative health and rehab, including sleep and how a lack of it impacts body weight, as well as memory, emotional balance, and cellular repair. Welcome, Seb.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. I've been helping people manage their weight for a long time, and I really know that a lot of people struggle with sleep. And although there are sleep clinics really focused on sleep apnea, I've found that there's a whole lot of people who just don't sleep well. They don't have sleep apnea, they just don't sleep well. And that there doesn't seem to be anything for them to do about it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So with my services, and my big passion is in longevity lifestyle, which includes weight management as well. And it's exactly the same. It's a completely unappreciated phenomenon, and we definitely need to do more to not only optimize our patients' understanding of sleep, but improve their sleep quality and quantity.
Yeah, great. And I had a sneak peek at your presentation slides, and there are some things in there that I've never come across. So I'm really keen to learn more and open up some options for listeners. So I'll hand over to you. And because we've pre-recorded this, Dr. Peterson's agreed to answer any questions you may have. So just submit those questions via our email address. So info@greatideas.net.au. And over to you, Seb.
Thank you so much. Right. You can see everything on your end?
Yep, got it.
Wonderful. So yes, again, thank you for the opportunity, Amanda. And I wish I came up with this title, but I didn't. That was all Amanda, which is a great title. So today we're going to be talking about sleep. And Amanda titled it, which is wonderful, The Night Shift and How Sleep Patterns Influence Weight and Metabolism. So as Amanda said, I'm a rehab physician and I have a strong emphasis and passion on optimizing people and patients' lifestyle and improving their health span and lifespan, which we'll go into a little bit at the end. But I really just want to focus on sleep first. So today we'll cover what is sleep architecture, how is sleep beneficial, how is lack of sleep harmful, what is insomnia, and how is poor sleep managed. And I'll just go into a little bit about what I do, just so you get an appreciation of what areas I cover. So we start with a definition of sleep, which you can see is quite long. So we just read it word for word. So it's a condition of body and mind that typically recurs for several hours every night, in which the eyes are closed, the postural muscles relaxed, the activity of the brain altered, and the consciousness of the surroundings practically suspended. It's a very broad definition, highlighting that there's a lot of things going on and a lot of things we don't know about it just yet. So the recommendations for sleep are to sleep 7 to 9 hours per night, and 20% of that sleep is suggested to be, or is recommended to be, deep sleep, and then 20% recommended to be REM sleep, so rapid eye movement sleep, which is where you dream. And we'll go into a bit of the sleep cycle and sleep architecture shortly. Sleeping less than 6 hours per night increases the risk of adverse cardiovascular events, dementia, and death by 30%, which is a staggering statistic. It is based on population studies, but it is still staggering. Sleeping greater than 9 hours is also associated by an increased mortality, which is probably due to an increased likelihood of a sleep disorder and or poor quality sleep. So as you can see, there is a range there based on the studies that have been done so far of how long we should sleep. So sleep architecture, let's go a little bit into the sleep cycles. So I'll just guide you through those graphs in a bit. So sleep itself is made up of cycles that last 70 to 120 minutes, and we repeat through those cycles throughout the night. There are 4 stages of sleep, the first 3 being non-REM sleep, and the last one being REM sleep, so rapid eye movement sleep. Stage 1 is where we fall asleep, or we're in our light sleep. Stage 2 is where we spend most of our time overnight when we sleep, and it's light sleep as well. Stage 3 is deep sleep, which is where we get a lot of our physical restoration and physical recovery. And then stage 4 in our REM cycle is where we dream and where we have a lot of cognitive restoration. There's an increased proportion of deep sleep earlier in the night and increased REM sleep later in the night. Now, if I can take you over to these pictures here, the diagrams. Now, the importance of a sleep schedule is really, really important. I can't emphasize this enough. So if we look at, for the top right-hand corner diagram, so if someone's sleeping, say, 8 hours, so I appreciate the graphics aren't great, but you can appreciate they go to sleep at 10 and they'll wake up at 6. If they then go to sleep one night at 12, they've only lost 2 hours of total sleep. But if you look at the light blue color, they've missed out on all of that. Okay, so they've missed almost a third to 50% of their deep sleep, which means the next day their body is unlikely to have been recovered. And if you then repeat this night after night, you can see we have a problem. And we can also say the reverse for the morning. If you get up 2 hours earlier than you normally would, then we can miss up to 50% of your REM sleep. So your cognitive capacity that day is suboptimal or is quite poor compared to the day before. And again, if we repeat that night after night, we're running into problems. So if we talk about why is sleep important, so the benefits of good quality and quantity sleep is, first of all, storage and processing of information and memories, reorganization of brain cells to increase or decrease required synapses, removal of waste products through the glymphatic system. Now, the glymphatic system, just like we have our lymphatic system in our body, there's new literature suggesting that we also have a similar model or similar process happening in the brain called the glymphatic system that removes excess fluid and excess proteins. The importance of this hasn't quite been elucidated just yet, but it does highlight, especially for patients with increased risk of dementia, if they have increased protein aggregates in their brain, maybe the glymphatic system can be involved in that. Sleep is also important for cellular repair and restoration, and it allows the production of energy substrates, increased protein synthesis, tissue growth, and hormone release overnight. And it also helps our emotional regulation. What are the consequences of sleep deprivation or insomnia? So increased risk of obesity, metabolic syndrome, and type 2 diabetes, inhibition of immune function, increased risk of high blood pressure, systemic inflammation, elevated cortisol, so stress markers, mood disturbances and disorders, reduced cognitive ability, and increased risk of injury and accidental death. So you can see not only are you getting a lot of negatives by not having enough sleep, but you're also missing out on a lot of positives. If we just focus our attention on weight, there's a lot of those. What is there? There's 8 points on the right-hand side. So poor sleep affects your metabolism, which we've specified by decreased glucose tolerance and decreased insulin sensitivity. It also affects your endocrine system from a weight perspective by increasing evening cortisol, so a stress hormone, increasing ghrelin, so the hormone that's responsible for hunger. It also decreases leptin, which is the hormone that's responsible for satiety or feeling full. Because you're tired, you make poor food choices. You're also sleeping less, which means you have increased time awake, which means increased eating time. And because of all of the above, there's often a reduced physical activity that goes accordingly or goes alongside poor sleep. So you can see sleep is a very pivotal aspect of making sure we're not only managing weight, but it can also be used as a treatment. So if we go into a little bit more about lack of sleep or sleep disorders, so insomnia, there is specific criteria you have to meet in order to be characterized or diagnosed with insomnia. And insomnia is characterized by the difficulty initiating and or maintaining sleep, which are called DIMS, and includes sleep latency of greater than 30 minutes. Sleep latency refers to the time that it takes for you to fall asleep. So if you go to bed, you're lying on your pillow, and it takes you more than 30 minutes to fall asleep, that's increased sleep latency. Waking periods of more than 30 minutes and unable to fall back asleep. Early waking of greater than 30 minutes before desired wake time and unable to fall back asleep. And the presence of one of these or more for at least 3 nights per week for 3 months or more. And this also occurs despite optimized behaviors that result in functional impairment, which can be job, which can be performance in terms of an athletic perspective, or anything else you need to do on a daily or weekly basis. These statistics are also quite alarming. So this was taken from the Sleep Foundation, so the Australian Sleep Foundation. And if we talk about short-term or acute insomnia, that's present if insomnia is present for less than 3 months. Chronic insomnia is when there's a sleep disturbance greater than 3 months or more. And the statistics show that 30 to 60% of all Australians have some sort of nocturnal symptoms, or some sort of sleep problems, which is a lot. That's 1 to 2/3 of us. 10 to 20% have both nighttime and daytime symptoms, and 10 to 15% of all Australians have chronic insomnia. So there's a huge population.
Can I just ask, Seb,
Yep.
is this increasing? Is it worse now than it has been historically?
I think, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But it's also studied more. So
Right.
it's sort of it's probably increasing the rates and increasing things like social media, television, but it's also the fact that we're also studying it more. So we don't actually know what people were doing prior to the technological revolution as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I also just wondered, I think maybe on your previous slide where you were showing the reduction in sleep, might have even been the previous one. Is yeah, so poor sleep, is
Mm.
this both whether it's a lack of deep sleep or whether it's a lack of REM sleep? They both do that?
Yeah, I mean, a very good clarification. So it's both. So poor sleep can be classified as either poor and not enough, a poor quality, or both.
And I guess that makes sense because whether or not you're cognitively fatigued or physically fatigued, we often reach for food or, certainly both of them are stressful experiences.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
okay, thank you.
yeah. Right. So, and then if we call what is the cause of insomnia? So there's 3P model. So we have the predisposing factors that place individuals at increasing risk. There's the precipitating factors that initiate insomnia. And then we have the perpetuating factors that maintain the insomnia. And as you can see from the graph on the right, initially it's the premorbid symptoms that increases your close or how close you are to the insomnia threshold. Then you have something happen in your life that initiate the insomnia. But over time, as you becomes a chronic insomnia, it's more the perpetuating factor. So the conditioned behavior, the heightened anxiety, the inappropriate sleep behavior, and the counterproductive compensatory mechanisms. So when patients come to me, we do a comprehensive sleep assessment, and it's a little bit too long just to discuss now, but I would like to just touch on a couple of those aspects that we assess when patients come to us. One is their sleep hygiene. So we assess all of their behaviors, current and past, to identify what sort of, if there's any issues there in terms of that could be impacting their quality or their quantity of sleep. We also look at their sleep efficiency. So sleep efficiency is a percentage of how much you are sleeping when you're in bed. So if you, for example, sleep 6 hours, but you spend 8 hours in bed, that's 75%. Okay. And we want that above 90 or above. Next is sleep opportunity. So how much you plan for sleep. So if you're planning 4 hours a night because you're busy, you finish work late, and you have things you do, that's sleep opportunity. Or if you plan, say 7, 8, or 9 hours. Sleep latency, as we discussed before, is how long it takes for you to fall asleep. And then the sleep pressure is what you do throughout the day so that when you get to bed, you're tired and you've prepared yourself for sleep. We also assess your daytime symptoms and function, and we screen for reversible causes such as obstructive sleep apnea by going through screening tests such as the stop bang and the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. And the importance I just want to re-emphasize here is the sleep pressure. So we actually, in order to achieve good sleep, it's something we have to prepare for throughout the whole day. So we have to make sure from the early morning we're exposed to sunlight, we're exercising, we're thinking about when we're having caffeine, we're thinking about when we're having meals, we're thinking about planning when we do stressful activities. all things like that. So there's a lot going into really achieving good sleep. What sleep metrics do we use? So sleep trackers have become very popular. So either on wearable devices such as Garmin's, Whoop's, Aura Rings, and also more manual metrics such as a sleep diary, which every day you write down the questions of what time you went to bed, what you did before you went to sleep, how long it took you to go to sleep, etc., etc. So it's very much just an assessment of every day. And then after you repeat that over a couple of weeks, we get an idea of, of your sleep and your sleep performance. So how do we manage poor sleep? So we've identified we either have insufficient quality, quantity, or both. Firstly, we want to optimize the patient's sleep program. If that fails, or we've done all we can and then we still have some room to move in terms of improving sleep, then we do cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. If that then fails, then we go on to pharmacological agents. I will discuss a little bit about each of these three. So optimizing behaviors and hygiene. So we need to make sure our environment is appropriate. We're in a dark, cool, and quiet room. We also, this is a difficult one for a lot of people, including myself. We make sure we have no distractions, or kids or pets. Okay. Which we have to also think about. We have to live as well, and we do have responsibilities, but just something to be mindful of if you can avoid that. Our behaviors also need to be optimized. So we need to have regular sleep-wake cycles, like I discussed before, and the importance of that. Avoiding napping, so there's an A missing there, I apologize. Avoiding napping, especially late in the afternoon. We make sure we plan a wind down routine or perform relaxation activities before we go to bed. Avoid caffeine consumption. So caffeine has a half-life of 6 hours. So if you have a 100 milligram cup of coffee in the morning, 12 hours from that, you'll still have 25 milligrams of caffeine. But just something to be mindful of, that it is, even though you say it doesn't affect you, caffeine often does affect your sleep quality without you knowing. It can prevent you from going into those deeper stages of sleep. As I said, we have to plan stressful activities earlier in the day, limit screen time, building sleep pressure, avoid large evening meals, and avoiding alcohol consumption. So alcohol consumption is a very good sedative. Makes us think we're going to sleep, but it doesn't actually facilitate good sleep. We recommend you don't lie in bed if you lie in bed for more than 15 minutes, and we have to plan how long we need to sleep for. We do that. If that's insufficient, we go on to the next step of the sleep program. So bedtime restriction therapy. The purpose is to reduce the time spent awake in bed and reduce the conditioned insomnia response of increased time awake, resulting in increased frustration and worry instead of rest and relaxation. Okay? So as we discussed before, it was mainly changing those behaviors that are perpetuating the chronic insomnia or chronic poor sleep. Principles, so restricted sleep period on one night increases your sleep pressure the following night. Okay, and we'll go into a little bit of an example of how you perform this. So you perform a 2-week sleep diary that we discussed before. The rule of thumb is that the allowed time in bed is the average amount of sleep the patient reports, not time in bed. And then we continue the sleep diary and review in 2 weeks. So again, if the patient was sleeping 6 hours, even though they're in bed for 8 hours, for the next 1 to 2 weeks, we plan their sleep opportunity to being 6 hours. So we only give them 6 hours of sleep, or we only plan 6 hours of sleep. After those 2 weeks, we reassess the sleep diary and we calculate the average sleep efficiency. If it's less than 85%, so that's to remember that sleep efficiency is a proportion of time in bed that you're sleeping. So you have the time asleep, divide that by the time in bed. If that's less than 85%, then reduce the time spent in bed approximately by 15 to 30 minutes. We go all the way down to 5 to 6 hours. However, if over the last 2 weeks they've done really well and their sleep efficiency is greater than 85%, then we can increase the sleeping opportunities, so how long we allow them to sleep, 15 to 30 minutes. And we keep reassessing this until we get above 85%. Now, it can take 4 to 5 weeks to really achieve improved sleep, but the effects are sustained, and this has been shown to induce remission of insomnia. But we don't recommend you do it during high pressure times of the year, because you are facilitating fatigue and poor sleep initially. So it is difficult, and it is a stressful program. If that then also fails, so the last two, we've optimized everything, we've tried sleep restriction therapy, we then go on to cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which is the first line therapy for chronic insomnia. There are 5 key components. The first two are cognitive therapy, which aims to identify the challenges, identify a challenge and replace, the dysfunctional beliefs and attitudes about sleep and insomnia. Then we have stimulus control, so behavioral instructions aimed at strengthening the association between bed and sleep and preventing condition of the patient to associate bed with other stimulating activities. It includes phone, lying awake, thinking, anxiety, things like that. Okay. The last 3 factors are sleep restriction, which we've talked about already. So that's included again in the cognitive behavioral therapy. Sleep hygiene, which we talked about, also included, and then relaxation therapy as well. Now, cognitive behavioral therapy, it can be expensive, especially if you're going through a psychotherapist. So we do recommend you can trial some digital options. So a couple of the app options are This Way Up, Sleep Ninja, which are both free, and then a Mindful Way, which is a one-off payment of $247. So it can save you some money if you are able to use technological devices. If you prefer to see an individual, a specialist dealing with this, or you have tried the digital devices or the digital options and haven't worked, then we do recommend you go get this through a psychologist. Now, it's not all psychologists that have been trained in this, so please contact them in advance just to ask. Okay, and it is covered by a GP mental health care plan, so you can get some money back from Medicare. Now, pharmacotherapy, which is often considered first line, and many people think, I'm not sleeping, I need to take a tablet. Unfortunately, evidence doesn't match that. So there's no evidence that sleep medications induce remission. There's only evidence for short-term use, and there's even some evidence that it causes sedation and not quality sleep. So we don't have a whole heap of positives, yet there are negatives. So they're associated with adverse cognitive, psychomotor, and physiological outcomes associated with dependence. So it's hard to get people off them. Increased risk of accidents and mortality with long-term use, and daytime drowsiness. However, if you've tried everything we've just mentioned before and nothing has worked so far, if your insomnia has lasted less than 3 months, for example, so you're under a lot of stress, you're dealing with grief, you can trial this as long as it's less than 4 weeks in duration and not every night. So, for example, on the weekends or particular nights you know are going to be difficult. And we only recommend it for patients under 65 years of age. And there are a couple of different classes of medications. Some are more specific to sleep onset, which is more facilitating sleep or getting into sleep. And then others are more specific to sleep maintenance, so keeping you asleep. Okay. So benzodiazepines, such things such as Valium, temazepam, aren't recommended. And if there is an issue with sleep onset, especially with sleep-wake cycles, if you're traveling, so jet lag, melatonin can be considered. Okay. So I hope that gives you a bit of an overview of sleep, how important it is, how we treat it. Now, we can go into a lot more detail depending on your individual situation, as this is more tailored for just an overview and more of a population education. So if you have any specific questions about any aspects of sleep, I'm more than happy to help. You just send through the questions, to either myself or Amanda, and then I'll have to do my best to answer them as soon as possible.
That's great. I have a few questions.
Yep.
So often I have clients who aren't sleeping well and they get up and make a sandwich and they feel that they need to do that before they can get back to sleep. One of my concerns about that has been that if you start your digestive system expecting food in the middle of the night, it'll wake you up to eat. You'll develop an actual appetite then. What's your thoughts on that?
I agree, yeah, and especially if we have also the issue of weight, either management or treatment. If you do, I do agree. If you can't sleep, get up. Don't stay in bed because that can actually make your sleep worse. But associate it with food is not a great idea, especially in this circumstance. So we have to try to come up with some sort of behavior or habit that doesn't involve eating. I agree with you on that one.
What do you think about just a cup of herbal tea or something like that?
Yep, yep, absolutely. Especially anything decaffeinated is, or
Mm.
without caffeine. Some decaffeinated products still have caffeine in them, but definitely non-caffeinated beverages, preferably hot. But that's just a preference. But yes, I do agree. Anything like that that can help calm, relax you, get you ready for bed. Pretty much like things you would do before you would actually go to sleep. Repeat them if you wake up and you need to go back to sleep.
So if somebody wakes up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep, what you're saying is that they like how long before you give up um, and decide I'm not getting back to sleep, and how long do
Mm.
you stay up? Do you just stay up until you feel a bit drowsy?
Yeah, I think if you have repetitive, if it's one night, doesn't really matter. If it's more than one or two consecutive nights, and you then get into a conditioned behavior, anything more than 30 minutes to an hour, we need to start figuring out or start investigating why this is happening.
Mm.
Because I assume what we're trying to prevent here is a chronic sleep. That's a really hard thing to treat. If we can get on it while patients, especially in the first 3 months, the chances are it's going to be much easier to treat, and you're also going to get back into your normal sleep cycle much, much quicker. So it doesn't become a conditioned behavior as
Yeah.
such.
Yeah. So you mentioned that all of these symptoms are common if you're under stress or having some anxiety, and that perhaps stressful times are not the time to, or maybe you said it was busy time, busy work times, not to
Mm,
actually put yourself through this process because it does induce fatigue. Um, if you aren't sleeping and you know that you're in a stressful time, what do you suggest there?
yeah, absolutely. So if it's short term, so we can do everything that we recommend with the exception of the sleep or the bedtime restriction therapy. So we can do all the sleep optimization in terms of sleep hygiene. We can still do the cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And if you meet these indications for pharmacotherapy, if you failed everything else, if you're under 65, your sleep has only been disrupted for less than 3 months, we can trial you on something as a last resort for less than 4 weeks. So it sort of still goes through that graded process. We would just avoid this bedtime restriction therapy.
Okay, so sometimes the pharmacotherapy can can just set up the system again. Can
Yeah, exactly. So it's more of a, as we talk about the issues with anxiety and relaxation is often what people have to struggle with. So even though sleep, or at least the medications, if they can just help you relax you, at least during that stressful period, and then you work on all the other strategies to build up that sleep routine and that good sleep cycle again, that just short-term relaxation may be able to help you get back into a good sleep rhythm.
Yeah, okay. And you mentioned that the pharmacotherapy wasn't recommended over the age of 65. Why is
Yep.
that?
Yeah, just due to the risk of side effects. That's purely just because as we're getting older, people often are associated with polypharmacy, higher risk of falls, cognitive depression, and also accidents. So it's purely just based on the risks of using the medications because they're sedatives.
Yeah, okay, great. Um, I think that covers all my questions. Thank you.
Mm, my pleasure. So it's a relatively brief overview. But I hope you got some sort of idea of how important sleep is. And also, there's a lot we can do to help you optimize your sleep.
So
And just,
one of the
yep, go on
questions,
in.
sorry, one of the questions I had for you originally was whether or not you can help people via telehealth.
Yep,
Um,
yep,
I've certainly got
definitely.
some people that I think need to see you.
Yep,
What what would happen during a telehealth consultation? How
yeah.
would
So
I
if it's purely for sleep, I would probably also, telehealth is absolutely fine. So what happens is my team would send out a whole heap of behavior templates, not only sleep, but also tap into or investigate stress, your social, emotional well-being, your nutrition, and also your exercise. So we definitely want to get an overview of your current and past behaviors, so you get an idea of, okay, what could be influencing sleep. And once we have all that information beforehand, during the consult, we can just work on solutions rather than having to spend the first consult coming up with what the problem is. We bring all that in advance. We get most of the information drawn out of you before the consult, and then during the consult, we just talk about what the issues are, and then we may come up with recommendations.
Okay. And you mentioned nutrition there. What
Yep,
are you looking for in nutrition? Maybe caffeine intake or
correct. Yeah, that sort of in supplements. Yeah, absolutely.
mm,
Yeah.
supplements? Are there particular supplements that are good or bad?
Oh, it's I just mainly it's important for me just to know if the patients are anything, especially if they're exercising and they're taking any stimulants in any particular sporting supplements. It's more that I'm just interested in, just easily reversible things that if we just stop that, it might actually help you sleep, similar to caffeine.
Yeah, yeah. Or the
Mm.
the Red Bull.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
I think we did a program with a work site about healthy lifestyle, and we were talking to people about caffeine. Everybody was agreeing, yeah, okay, we're going to reduce our caffeine, and then a promotional truck from Mother or Monster or one of these energy
Yes,
drinks pulled up, and
yes.
everyone ran out and grabbed their free
Oh,
energy.
that's exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah, it's I don't recommend. I don't think I've had any patient I've ever recommended try some of those beverages, but it's personal preference, I guess.
I know they're rife in the construction industry, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. So how do people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I am the director of Thrive Rehab Clinics, which we are based out of 3 facilities. So we have the closest to you is probably John Flynn, but we also have Varsity Lakes, Physiologic, and then we also work out of Pacific Private and Southport. So we cover sort of South, Central, and North Gold Coast. And in addition to sleep, we have 3 main pathways or services we offer our patients. We have longevity, where we look at a lot of proactive healthcare and proactive medicine. So we make sure our patients achieve their maximal health span and lifespan. We do that by identifying and mitigating early risk factors or markers of diseases such as heart disease, stroke, dementia, cancers, chronic lung disease, and metabolic disorders such as type 2 diabetes and obesity. And we also optimize those lifestyle pillars of behavior that I mentioned before. So exercise, sleep, nutrition, stress, social and emotional well-being. We do rehabilitation medicine, which is where we help our patients achieve their goals by optimizing their function, their independence, and their quality of life. And then sports medicine, which is a little bit more tailored to athletes, helping them improve their physiology either through VO2 max and lactate testing, and then prescribing exercise according to that. We also prevent and treat sporting injuries, which includes anything from a musculoskeletal injury to injections under ultrasound guidance if we need, and then also make sure our athletes are healthy. So we do employ the rehabilitation medicine and the longevity services in our sports med consults as well.
It might be interesting to point out that where you're working from there at Varsity Lakes is the same place as we send our people for metabolism testing. So we've done a previous webinar with Dave
Yep.
looking at people's ability to burn fat, and that really seems to be a problem. And I think we don't know enough about what causes that.
Mm.
But yeah, it's
Yeah, I
just
agree. Very, very well equipped and experienced team there.
yeah. But I guess some people are outside the Gold Coast, but might be very interested in understanding sleep. Or their own problems and going through
Yep.
this program. Whenever we've looked at sleep or spoken to people about
Mm.
what they've
Mm.
found out about sleep before, it's all about sleep hygiene. And you can read that in a magazine, but
Yeah.
I've never actually seen that that program or concept of only being in bed for 90% of the time or 85% of the time that you typically sleep. So I'm very interested to see how that works for people. And also that mention of the glymphatic system, which
Yeah.
I've never heard of. But when I saw that your mention of that, I did my little Google, which suggested that it was that particular time of sleep. What time of sleep is it that the glymphatic system is meant to be kind of clearing things out?
That's exactly right. So it is unfortunately only in the deeper sleeps. So even though we think we're getting in the lighter sleep and we're getting all the benefits, to get those effects, we do have to be in the deeper cycles of sleep.
Yeah, and I gather the concept is that if we never actually get to spend much time in that deeper sleep, which you identified was usually at the beginning of the night, so staying up late or staying up beyond when you typically go to bed makes you miss out on that you're not getting that that clearing of what is it we're clearing.
Yeah, so it's proposed. So there's still not, they haven't quite confirmed all of the evidence. It's still a model that they've found, but they are suggesting that the byproducts of metabolism, including protein aggregates, such as those associated with neurodegenerative conditions such as dementia, they're the ones they're not being cleared out. I am going to be very interested to see if they can confirm that in the future. The model itself seems logical, but even though it's logical doesn't mean it actually happens.
True. Yeah, it is logical though, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
And so it's exciting to find some explanations or find some reasons to raise the importance of this issue, because some people just accept I'm just a poor sleeper and that's the way it is.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks so much for that.
My pleasure.
Do you have a slide that has your telephone number on it?
Yes, that's I've just included my email there.
Okay.
And then
great.
if they also want to just Google Thrive Rehab Clinics or thriverehabclinics.com.au, that's the website as well if they want to post a comment or a question on the website rather than emailing it to us. That's another pathway to contact us.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been a
Pleasure.
fantastic session, and I think it'll be of great interest to a lot of people. So thanks again for your time.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And just the references there to make sure that I don't plagiarize anyone. And if anyone wants more information of where those particular references can come from and what references they use in which aspect, just please contact me and I'll help them out as well.
Fantastic. Okay. So thanks everyone for coming along. If you find value in these sessions, then please spread the word. I get to attend a lot of professional conferences where I get to meet some of the best minds in the business. The larger the audience we have, the greater the interest speakers have in joining us. If you want to support us, check out our products and services at greatideas.net.au or on Amazon in the US, and or refer a friend. All they need to do is make a purchase or download a freebie from our website and they'll get onto the invitation list for these webinars. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram too at Portion Perfection. Thank you for joining me for this very interesting discussion, and I'll see you next time.